Welcome, everyone, to the Phoenix Report. I am Jack Connor, and with me is my buddy Seamus Pautz.
Hey, guys.
It's been a while since we've done one of these movie reviews, but we just got out of seeing Bohemian Rhapsody. As I record this, it is Sunday. November 18th, 2018. The movie's been out for a little while. Seamus already saw it one more time before I did.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to see it. I wanted to see it opening weekend, but it just, again, I have a 1-year-old and a lot of different stuff going on. So I finally got to see it, and I'm very glad we did. I want to preface this with saying that I cannot overstate the importance that Queen and their music have had in my life.
Absolutely.
Next to, I want to say, the Beatles and Kiss, I cannot think of a more influential figure to me as a singer than Freddie Mercury. The name of this podcast, The Phoenix Report, was inspired by Queen because Freddie drew their the logo for the band with the astrological symbols of everyone in the band, but also drew a phoenix.
I didn't know that. Wow.
On top of it.
That's awesome.
So that is one of the many reasons why that symbol, that particular character, the Phoenix, has always kind of resonated with me a lot, and a lot of it was inspired by this guy.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, I'm the lead singer of a band. I believe from the bottom of my heart that Freddie Mercury was the greatest rock and roll frontman of all time.
Oh, but there's very little arguing that.
And there have been a lot of greats, but
Yeah.
for a lot of different reasons. For not only his voice, his stage presence, his songwriting, his musicianship.
He was kind of the complete package when it came to
pretty much. I think some people have argued that Prince is definitely up there, which I would agree. But Prince was more of an R&B guy. Freddie was very much a rocker.
His appeal was broader, for sure.
For sure. Yeah. And even though Freddie brought in a lot of different influence as well, like opera and a lot of... he was very musically diverse. But
Right.
But in terms of rock and roll frontman, I put Freddie at the top. And certainly no disrespect to Prince or anybody like that.
Absolutely
But
not. But yeah,
man.
Freddie was kind of head and shoulders above everyone else, at least in my mind as well.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I was going into this movie a little bit biased. I had already known a lot about Queen going into it.
Right.
I had kind of expected that there might be a few anachronisms as far as the timeline. But that overall, like, I really can't complain. With the way this movie was shot.
Yeah,
it was,
a lot of things, some things were switched around for the sake of maybe dramatic effect, which is completely understandable. It's kind of standard for most biopics to do that.
Yeah.
And as far as the story itself, like, it kind of was a little by the numbers as far as a biopic goes, but at the same time, things like the use of Queen's music, the acting, and just the cinematography in general made this, for me, like, this is the second time I watched it, and I loved it the first time, and I loved it even more the second time. Just like, I was just so in awe while I was watching it and everything. So it was so great.
I know it took quite a few years for this movie to get made.
Yeah.
I know originally Sacha Baron Cohen was attached to star as Freddie.
Right.
And I think he had issues with the script. I think Sacha Baron Cohen, from what I understand, he wanted to emphasize more of the sex and drugs and rock and roll,
right,
and all the excesses part of of Freddie's life. And I think the band wanted to put his story in a more flattering light, which I can't really blame them for making that choice.
I mean, this movie, the way they designed this movie was to be a celebration of the band.
Yeah.
And that's really what it was. I mean, the man too, yes, but it was very much a celebration of the man Freddie Mercury, but what I liked about it was that it was also a celebration of the music and of the other band members as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that there was so much more to Freddie than just being a partier and living his life to excess, which he did.
Yes.
There's no argument to that, but he was He was also a very kind person to his friends.
Yes.
You know, for the most part, obviously.
Yeah,
I mean, look, there were a few scenes in there where he wasn't, but by all accounts, he was very generous, and he was a fairly quiet guy off stage.
That's honestly, I've known a lot of people that are like stage performers, and that seems to be the case in general. Like I've met quite a few people that are like that.
Michael Jackson was very much that way, and that's something a lot of people knew. So Freddie definitely had that that kind of personality to him.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of it was put it up a front for other people, but
of course. It was, his stage persona. And,
yeah,
it was there.
And I know what that's like, because you go on stage, you're in control of a situation. That's power.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's something I can definitely relate to.
I was actually kind of genuinely curious as to what you would think about this movie from the perspective of somebody who is a lead singer in a rock band, and obviously who is, inspired by Queen in some ways for sure. Yeah, I was really happy I was able to see it with you and like see what you thought of it and everything too.
Yeah, no, I mean, this was something that was very important for me to see. I knew a lot of details about his life and about the band's career. This brought to life some other things that I didn't know as well. I knew that his manager. And again, I forget the names. I don't have the sheet in front of me of all the people's names, but I know that Peter, I think.
Yeah, I think that might be right.
Yeah, I know that he was someone who wasn't a particularly good influence on Freddie.
Bit of a toxic person, to be honest. Yeah, and it seemed like, he was very controlling of Freddie's life, it seemed like, as well.
I really liked how they focused on the relationship between Freddie and Mary Austin.
Yes. That was actually that was something that I genuinely did not know about it.
I think most people didn't know. I mean, because everyone assumed that, which rightly so. I mean, Freddie was gay, but he did have both male and female lovers.
Right, exactly.
He was bisexual by all accounts.
I just never knew. I mean, I did know that he was bisexual, but I never knew that he had been married. Like that he had been actually, or in a long-term relationship, or been in a committed relationship with somebody.
Yeah.
So, like, finding out that about Mary and actually finding out that to be true, he, I think, is quoted to be saying that Mary was his dearest and truest friend or something like that. That was actually something that I did not know going into.
Yeah, I mean, he did write the song "Love of My Life" about her.
Oh wow!
And they were when he was younger, they were in a very committed relationship. Right. And what I didn't know is that he actually proposed to her at one point. That surprised me. I didn't really hear about that. I mean, looking back on it, it didn't really surprise me because I know that he did love her.
Right.
But again, just him coming to grips with his sexuality and which I think in any kind of relationship, especially, you have to look at the time and place that was at.
Oh, absolutely. It was
the 70s and the 80s, and people were on the road. It's hard for anyone to be faithful in any kind of relationship, especially back then.
Yes.
It's very rare in rock music. There haven't been many. There haven't been many of those.
I mean, when you're on tour for that long, for months at a time and everything like that, there's going to be like that temptation, obviously, and you're that prolific of a performer as well.
And then you mix, substances with that.
Yeah, exactly. It's, there are going to be,
which I was surprised at how much they downplayed some of the drug use.
For sure. I mean, it was definitely there. And I think it was definitely very much a part of Freddie's life. But they kind of did downplay it a little bit, just to it wasn't really the focus of the movie. Again, it was more of a celebration. But he did have his struggles, and, drugs were one of those.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, just in terms of some of the decisions he made, it makes me wonder. It's like, would he have lived a lot longer? Had he made a few different choices here. But again, you got to look at the time and place that it was at. I mean,
there wasn't a lot known.
People know about
AIDS.
Yeah,
then.
People know a lot more about it now than they did years ago. I mean, for God's sake, Magic Johnson is still alive and well, and by all accounts doing great. So it's not to say, I mean, there's still no cure for AIDS necessarily, but it's definitely a lot more manageable now than it was
exactly
back then.
And, you know, Freddie just got kind of unlucky when it came to, like, the timing and everything. He just finding out about a brand new disease that scientists knew nothing about, and he being one of the first, well, not one of the first, but one of the early victims of it.
Yeah. Certainly in the rock world, he was the first AIDS casualty that we knew about. So it's, but yeah, it's one of those things. I know I knew going into it that they were going to end the movie at Live Aid, the concert in '85.
I'm so glad
which was a good choice, because that was sort of their peak, really. That was such a huge moment for the band, and even the tour that followed, the Magic Tour, was really huge across Europe.
Now, you probably knew this, but I did not know this after during Live Aid, that Queen actually made another appearance at the end of Live Aid.
They did.
Where they sang one or two more songs. And I thought that was really cool. They didn't include that in the movie, but I did not know that about, again, I don't know much about the actual discussion. But that concert was a little bit more low-key, but it was really cool to see them actually be on, because apparently they were slated in last minute, but they were allowed to come back and play again during Live Aid. So that was really cool. That's
true. Later at night, it was just Freddie and Brian.
Yeah, exactly.
But they went up and they did Love of My Life acoustically, and they also did Is This the World We Created, which was one of their newer songs at the time.
Exactly.
From and I think that's one of the things they sort of they sort of exaggerated a little bit. They implied that there was a period where they weren't speaking to each other, and whether or not that was true, Queen, the band, never actually broke up.
Yeah.
They did a record together in '84 called The Works.
Okay.
That was the follow-up to Hot Space from '82. '83 they kind of took some time off to do some other projects.
Right.
But even if there had been some infighting there, which by all accounts that they would have
very much
they would have have disagreements and everything, but it never got
when you have a band with strong personalities in it, with any number of strong personalities in it, and all four of these guys had relatively strong personalities. I know a couple of them were quieter than others, but I mean, when you have somebody like Freddie Mercury involved in the mix, there's going to be a little bit of conflict. So that's not unrealistic to see.
Right, but for the most part, like the four of them, like they stayed together for 20 years until Freddie passed in '91. So it's like there was a very close relationship there.
Exactly. And one thing that I really did enjoy about this movie was how supportive they showed the other band members being, especially earlier on
days,
when they were pitching Bohemian Rhapsody in the movie. You just saw the other three bandmates. They were all on board. They're like, let's do this. We need to do this. This is going to be amazing.
I can tell you, being in bands, that's a very rare thing to find.
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing
especially if you're taking some risks stylistically, and that's very difficult to get everyone on board, and they, like, the relationship they had with each other was really, really cool to see.
It was magic. I mean, it really was.
It really was. And obviously Freddie was the star of that band, but all four of those guys were incredible songwriters.
Right.
Brian and Roger were great singers. All four of them wrote like number one hit songs over their career. That doesn't happen very often. Like, it's almost unheard of.
Exactly. And just seeing I know we're kind of going all over the place with this movie, but like even seeing like when the conditions for them getting back together were that they all wanted to be credited just Queen. They no matter who writes it, no matter who comes up with
that was true, especially in their later albums.
Exactly. That was actually really cool in my mind as well. The fact that we don't want the more glory than another person in the band. We just want to be Queen, and that's that was really cool to see.
I mean, it's one of those things. As a guy in a band, it's like I kind of agree with that, but I don't really at the same time, because it's like I feel like if you wrote the song, you should get credit for it. But I mean, I can see why some bands agree to that sort of thing.
And this was later on in their career as well, and they had already kind of written a lot of their hits.
That's true.
Anyway, so I mean, it was just kind of cool just to kind of solidify their relationship later on that they did that, at least in the movie. I don't know how accurate it was, but at least in the movie that was a really
I think
cool
I don't know if they made that agreement that early on,
right?
But I mean, it did happen at one point, especially in their later albums like The Miracle and Innuendo and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, so much happened, throughout the band's career and even in the later years, which, it's a shame that they skipped over parts of that, but again, that would have been in the later years when Freddie was getting more sick, and I'm kind of glad they didn't emphasize that.
The whole point of this...
Because that would have been too sad.
I think, yeah, exactly. I think the whole point of this movie, and I think it's exactly what Freddie Mercury would have wanted from what I've learned about him, is to remember him at his best.
Yes.
And that's why they ended it at Live Aid. That's why they didn't show anything after that. Yeah. Because they wanted to remember him. They wanted you to remember not just some guy who was, dying of AIDS. They wanted you to remember Freddie fucking Mercury. That's exactly what
he was much too proud to admit it, and right up until the end. But yeah, no, I mean, it's he was an incredible person, and they were a great band. I had heard reports of they had shot the Live Aid sequence first, because they were thinking, like, if we can't get this, then we don't have a movie. Yeah, and I know we were talking about this earlier. Brian and Roger were on set, the real Brian and Roger, and I had heard reports of, Brian May kind of looking at, Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury and kind of tearing up a little bit because he was thinking about his buddy. And that stuff is, like, really cool to hear about.
It's really touching to hear. And a lot of that can be attributed to the amazing job they did of making Rami become Freddie, like of Rami, of not only just the makeup and the prosthetic teeth, but Rami's acting as well. I swear, in one scene...
I honestly, even before this, I didn't even know he was American in real life.
Rami's American?
Yeah.
Wow.
He is.
I did not know that.
Because I had seen him in, like, Night at the Museum and stuff.
Oh, yeah, exactly. He's always had, like, a British accent in a lot of things.
I just assumed he was a Brit. I know he's also on the show Mr. Robot on USA. I've never seen that show. But
apparently, that is what got him the role for Bohemian Rhapsody, like his work in...
That makes sense. I mean, he'd done that show for a couple years. I think I don't know if he's still doing the show or not, but
I've not seen it. I need to check it out.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I know that's been around for a while. I've never seen it. I don't know what it's about, but I know that's his deal.
But I've seen Rami around, like, before in different movies and everything.
Going back to what I said earlier, I know this movie had a little bit of controversy with. The director is credited as being Bryan Singer.
Yes.
However, he was, after Bryan Singer was fired midway into production of this, and there were parts of it that he didn't direct, but he is being credited as the main director.
And if that's true, and if they started, I'm
just gonna say this. I've heard a lot of accusations about Bryan Singer, and it wouldn't surprise me, based on, I mean, because this isn't something new. Like, he's been accused of things for a while, and it's easy to look at some of his movies before and some of the casting and be like, and almost look at it sideways. I'm like, okay, well, how did this guy get cast on here? So, and again, I don't want to speculate. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but that seems to be the case.
I see. I did not know a lot about, like, why Bryan Singer got excused from the
production. if those accusations are true, then he is the guy's a predator.
Okay.
But and again, I don't want to speak out of turn here. I don't want to, I don't know all the facts.
Right.
So, but that's what I hear. So I don't want to slander anyone, but that's what we hear. But regardless, this isn't about Bryan Singer. This is about the movie.
No, it's about Queen.
Yeah, it is. And so I'm very glad that we got to see this.
Me too. I'm glad, the first review we've done in a while was about something as prolific as this movie. Like, I've read a lot of critical reviews about this movie, and a lot of critics don't seem to enjoy it because of maybe the predictability of the script. But there was so much good about this movie that
it really was.
Really can't be ignored.
really one of the ultimate love letters to Queen fans.
Exactly. That's exactly what this movie was made to be. I mean, yes, that's why Sacha Baron Cohen didn't want to be a part of it, but we don't need more negativity in the world necessarily. And we don't,
Well, also, I mean, Brian May and Roger Taylor were, they were heavily involved in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
as well they should be, because it's about their band.
It's their story. Like, they should be able to tell. And by the way, the guy who played Brian May was, like, identical.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, props to Rami for portraying Freddie. He did an amazing job. But the other guys in the band, like, especially the guy who played Brian, looked and sounded exactly like Brian. It was
uncanny.
It was
amazing.
Ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. It was really cool to see. Like, the standout aspect of this movie was the casting, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everybody just looked, and even the people you didn't know as much. There was not a bad actor in this bunch.
Even the guy who portrayed Jim Hutton, who was Freddie's partner in the later years of his life, really looked like the real Jim Hutton.
Yeah. They showed pictures at the end of the movie and everything, and everybody looked exactly like, the actors and everything. It was really cool. But it was really cool. Like, the casting was really good. The cinematography was gorgeous, especially in the concert.
It's almost a shame that they didn't try and recreate some of the footage from a year later. Queen went back to Wembley on their own and sold it out.
Oh wow!
And that's
awesome.
That's one of probably my all-time favorite concert is they're live at Wembley in '86 during
I gotta check
the
that
Magic
out.
Tour. It was them. It was one of the last couple of live shows they actually did.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was that, and they did like one other show after that, but that was it as far as their live shows.
I swear, the performance again, and if you've seen the movie, I highly recommend you see this movie, then go home and watch on YouTube the Live Aid concert, because it is. You'll notice it's almost a shot-for-shot remake.
It's
really
very, very close.
It's super close. They leave out a couple songs, because I think the concert proper was 20 minutes long, and the scene at the end of the movie was, I think, about maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So
Something like that.
A little bit shorter. It was a little bit shorter, but it was amazing, just the amount of detail that went into it. And it was so awesome. It's just like, it felt like the sweeping shots of the crowds and just how they actually involved the crowds into it. It almost felt like you were there. Yeah. Like, it really did.
I mean, obviously a lot of it was CGI, the crowd work. I think that would have been way too expensive.
Oh,
to fill up
absolutely.
Wembley
I mean, especially
like
those bigger shots of, like, the actual stadium itself. Definitely CGI, but it was very well executed CGI in a lot of different instances. And it's honestly, as far as the camera work goes, some of the best I've seen in a while, dude. Yeah. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, what more can you say? It's, I think if a movie like this comes out and gets more people into Queen's music and talking about them, then I think it's done a good job.
Absolutely.
I feel like if this inspires more bands more young guys to start bands and make some great music, then that's a great thing too.
Absolutely. I mean, one key thing about this movie, like with the critical reception with it, when they were showing the premiere of Bohemian Rhapsody, the song in the movie, they showed not only the silhouettes of the four band members singing it, they also started superimposing the critical reception of it.
That was great.
If that's not a perfect representation of this movie, then I don't know what is. Because
people forget Queen were not always the critics' darlings.
Yeah, exactly. Like, basically, I saw one that they highlighted. It said "perfectly adequate." I was like, "What?
Yeah,
this is Bohemian Rhapsody."
It's true. Like, the critics were not always fans of theirs.
Here's the thing, though. It was ahead of its time, and I can absolutely see why people would hate it.
I don't think they were ever on the cover of Rolling Stone.
No, probably not. I bet you, like, a lot of, music quote-unquote critics would be like, who the hell are these guys, and what are they doing? What is this 6-minute-long mess? Yeah. Like, I can absolutely see that.
Like, they were never the cool or hip thing.
Yeah, exactly. But they were artists, and they stayed true to it.
They really did. And, yeah, I mean, there's nothing more you can say about what they did. It's incredible. I love the fact that Mike Myers was in this playing
That was great.
playing the record executive.
It was so good.
I mean, my God. I mean, when you think about Queen, you almost think about Wayne's World.
Absolutely.
How a year after Freddie passed, Wayne's World having Bohemian Rhapsody, that song was like number one again.
Yeah, it brought
the charts.
Bohemian Rhapsody back to number one in the charts.
That was the first time I had ever heard that song as a kid, seeing that movie in the theaters.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what is this song? And like, these are the same guys who did We Will Rock You? Like,
yeah. See, that's the thing. That's the thing about Queen is their style just differs.
They were
in every
fearless.
song that they do, and
Another One Bites the Dust.
Yeah,
and like that's the thing, and that's
it was so funny, like hearing
that sense of freedom and. I mean, not only were they experimental, but they did it in a very palatable way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of bands get experimental just for sake of like, how crazy can we get it?
Yeah.
They did it in a way, but they wrote great songs, and they kept. And Brian May's guitar was the anchor, and that kept that rock.
Mm-hmm. That is, like the consistent aspect.
He kept the heaviness into it, no matter what direction they would go. Brian May was definitely the anchor of that band.
Yep.
And I think that's what a lot of people forget. Like, they weren't just like off the wall just for the sake of doing it. They had a purpose to what they did.
All of their songs, like they experimented a lot, but all of their songs were amazing.
Yeah.
Like there's
and
one that isn't.
For me as a songwriter, as a guy in a band, that is the kind of thing I've always been chasing. Mm-hmm. The kind of situation where like, who cares what people think our sound is? We are whatever band I'm in.
Yeah.
We are who we are, and that's that.
Exactly.
And, it's always been easier said than done pitching that to other guys sometimes. But, it is what it is.
It's true. And you see other bands struggle with it nowadays, too, trying to evolve to become... I mean, it's good to change, but they kind of, a lot of bands seem to, like, change themselves to appeal to a younger audience and everything like that. But Queen, they were still them, and they experimented and they improved, but they were always themselves. And that was, that's what's amazing about them. That's why... Honestly, they're probably going to be one of the standout bands that like last years after we're gone. Like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. That what they've made, is legendary, and that word gets thrown around a lot. But they really were that.
Mm-hmm. They were legends.
So I'm glad that this movie got made, and I'm glad that it's doing as well as it is, and I'm glad that people are talking about Queen again.
Theater was packed.
Yeah.
This is like 2 weeks into it. Theater's not normally as packed as it was when we went there, there were lots of people there, and that made me really happy. That was awesome.
Me too. And it means a lot to me personally to see this movie get made, just because of how much of a fan of this band I've been, and I always like kind of joke around with like, and because I have my little 1-year-old daughter right now, I'm like if I had it my way, Freddie would have honorary grandparent status for my kid.
Absolutely.
Just musically. So it's like she will no doubt hear a lot of that music from me. And so it's
right.
So yeah, but it's a good thing. And like I said, the reason that this podcast is named what it is because of Freddie Mercury. So I figured I'd share that with you all. And Seamus, I'm glad you got to see this with me, man.
Yeah, man. It's always a pleasure, for sure.
For sure. Where can they find you online?
Follow me online, Instagram at Celtic Kraut 75. Let's see, just follow me on Facebook. We still have our episodes of our podcast that me and my brother did of Lord of the Rings called The Silmarilliots, a blue collar take on Tolkien.
Yeah.
There's a couple episodes on there you can listen to. Maybe one of these days we'll make a new one. Follow me, Celtic Kraut 75 on Twitter, and just if you want to talk about movies, just let me know.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. You can follow me on Twitter at jackxconnor. Same thing on Instagram. And on Facebook at facebook.com/jackconnormusic. You can check out my band, Vertebraker, facebook.com/vertebrakerband. I'll spell it out in the description. And thanks for listening. This has been the Phoenix Report. He's Seamus. I'm Jack. We'll see you later. Rock on.